Welcome back. The Nigerian government has warned that Africa's most populous country of over 160 million people risk acute food shortage or famine from early next year following a huge demand in the global market targeting the country's surplus agri production. Nigeria is Africa's largest producer of cereals and grains, but majority of this production are heading to neighboring West African countries and as far as Libya and Algeria in North Africa. Nigeria's aggressive agri-production started under the Obasanjo administration in 2003 with initial focus on cassava and other farm produce. Osakwe, CEO of Agrolay and former staffer at African Development Bank, joins me to talk about this, especially with a recent warning from the federal government of an imminent famine. Good morning to you, Ada. Thank you so much for joining me on the program. Well, Ada, thank you so much for joining me on the program. We were supposed to have you join us here in the studios, but because of the traffic gridlock owing to the accident on the bridge, there's been no way for you to get to us here. But thank you so much for finding time out to stay with us via Skype. So if you can hear me, let's start this conversation. What do you make of the federal government's announcement of an imminent famine in
Good morning, Harriet.
It's great to have you. Finally, we've gotten through to you. So what do you make of the federal government's warning of an imminent famine next year? Right, we'll try to sort out that connection and reconnect with Ada Osakwe, who is the CEO of Agrolay. But before then, let's quickly take you through some of the markets that we track here for you on the program. Of course, the Debt Management Office will be holding a bond auction today. We'll be selling about 95 billion naira of bonds that are reopenings of previous issues. But let's review how yesterday finished off. We saw that the bonds market was relatively quiet ahead of today's auction as yields inched up slightly on long-dated tenors, particularly the ones maturing on the 22nd of January 2026 and the 13th of February 2020. We saw price highs of 84.90 and 99.95 with various values, with respective values of 4.83 and 3.20 billion naira. So the remaining two there, that is bonds maturing on the 18th of March, 18th of July 2036 and 2034 respectively, had price highs of 80.10 and 80 naira. In all, we saw about 15.15 billion naira realized at the end of the day's trade, and deals came in at 131. For the Treasury bill space, the Central Bank of Nigeria will be holding a primary market auction of over 140 billion naira, and the same amount is supposed to hit the system on Thursday. But yesterday we saw total number of deals on bills, Nigerian Treasury bills, that is, on the FMDQ OTC's market, coming in at 571 with a value of 146.62 billion naira, and those are the top four most actively traded treasury bills from the FMDQ OTC's market. So you notice that investors are still favoring short to medium dated bills. The most active was the bill maturing on the 29th of December. That had a discount high of 16.10% and a value of 29.25 billion naira. The bill maturing on the 16th of February had value of 20.45 billion naira at the end of the day and a discount high of 17.80. As you can see, the other two bills of the top four from yesterday's trade. Overnight money, that's from the interbank, we saw that liquidity remains low and interbank lending rates actually closed lower across most of the tenors. So overnight money came in at 27.42%. The 1, 3 and 6 month NIBOR rates contracted to close at 18.54, 20.18 and 21.73% respectively. Right, we've been able to re-establish connection with Ada Osakwe, who is the CEO of Agrolay and a former staffer at African Development Bank. As we take a look at this particular issue that has got a lot of hearts palpitating, the federal government has reported a famine is imminent because most of the products grown here in Nigeria are exported. And so we're talking to Ada Osakwe to get her thoughts on this particular developing issue. Ada, thank you so much for sticking around.
It's my pleasure, Harriet. Can you hear me now?
Very clearly, and it's great to have you on the program. We were supposed to have you here in the studios with us, but because of the traffic gridlock owing to the accident on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, we had to make this a telephone conversation. So, Ada, quickly, let's get your thoughts. A lot has been said about the federal government's announcement with regards an imminent famine alert. What do you make of it? Just give us your thoughts.
I think it's it's just yet another sad dark hole in issues regarding agriculture. One thing after the other this year, we've heard that is not too good news for the sector, and a sector that we know is the main source of livelihoods for millions of Nigerians, and one that we intend to use to take us out of this recession as we diversify our economic base away from oil. So, we heard this news yesterday, the famine, and, what does that really mean? That's an acute shortage of food in many areas. And the reason the government has given for this is around, just like you said, Harriet, the fact that our cereals are being exported to countries like Brazil and elsewhere instead of being used locally. And it's one sometimes has to think that what happened to our storage facilities, what happens to being able to put these things to good use locally. So it is unfortunate, but I believe this government is taking certain actions as they go forward to address the issue.
So Ada,
as you know.
So, sorry to cut you here. So you already mentioned that it probably is the issue of storage and distribution. It's not with regards to production, because long before now, we know that the agricultural value chain has really been on the front burner trying to promote this very critical industry. So taking a look at the agro-allied sector, which is where you also belong, what are the main issues? Where will they be looking at, for instance, exporting more than making sure we have here, because we've got producers here that need these products, for instance cocoa, for instance grains like cereal and wheat.
Absolutely, and a lot of it, and I talked about this a lot, is the issue of a lack of adequate infrastructure to take care of this value chain. So I mentioned storage earlier on. In the previous administration, I believe they finished and tried to complete about 110,000 metric tons of our silos capacity to be able to store these grains that we're talking about efficiently. So it's a situation where the government maybe buys back excess capacity, excess produce from our farmers at a minimum price or at an attractive enough price, stores it for future use. So yes, we don't have enough of those situations going on with regards to proper infrastructure of both dry storage silos as well as silos that are conditioned for fresh produce. A second issue with regards to infrastructure that causes this phenomenon is around road networks. So if you can't move the maize or the rice from areas in the north to other parts that have maybe those processing facilities that you mentioned, Harriet, the cost of doing business goes up. So today, an exporter who the government has blamed for this, what is going on, this potential farming, because they're sending the food out instead of selling it locally. The exporter has why shouldn't he or she? They're business people and they want to make money. So it becomes, what is the cost of doing business? If it's easier for me to export and earn foreign exchange at a time when foreign exchange is is not readily available, I would rather do that than have high costs of having to transport these facilities, not only store it, but transport it, pay all the different levies at different checkpoints when I'm moving on the road,